It's also not every day that I get to say I make breakfast in the studio, though. And it's been a while since I did that. So, you know, you gotta look on the sunny side. Oh my god. I'll leave. See? Oh well. I made my gravy with not real sausage, and it doesn't break up like you would expect it to, so they're all in like weird chunks, so don't judge me, okay? That's all I'm saying. My legs are still wetting. Okay. Our camera. I'm gonna cook some little egg breakfast for my dogs too. Come on. Because it's very cold outside and they've been very, very patiently waiting for me this morning. And it's been a while since I've made a nice warm breakfast for the beagles. So when I make breakfast for my dogs, I add some oatmeal. And I also add some peanuts. They're probably going to go crazy as soon as they smell the peanut and oatmeal smell. Well, let's find out if my ramshackle pile of garbage here and one infrared bird coop heater managed to keep my peppers alive or not. There she is, all uncovered. Again, I think for the last time. basically out of room over here. Okay, the last load. So last night I probably could have just let it ride and not taken everything inside, but I did that one year when it was past our last frost date and it wasn't forecast to be that cold that night. And see, that was April of 2018. And it was, I think, like around this day or maybe the last day of April. And our last frost date was like April 21st. So I assumed that I was in the clear. The thing about frost dates is that it's not your last possible frost date, it's your last average, which means that there are years where the last frost occurs a lot before that date and a lot after that date. Because if you take two numbers and average them together, that includes every extreme. And last year we actually had a killing frost on the 1st of May. So the last frost date is really not, it's not set in stone. It's wild. It's up to nature. So to be on the safe side, what you can do is you can wait until like 2 weeks after that last frost date to plant anything like tomatoes, cucumbers, zucchinis, and so on. You can also look at your 10-day forecast and kind of see what the weather pattern is going to do and if it's going to like really take a dive in the temperatures or not. Looking at my 10-day forecast, this was definitely by far the coldest night, and the rest of my forecast, the lowest temperature is like 45. So I'm going to go ahead and get ready to plant. I was planning to plant my tomatoes around Cinco de Mayo, and so I think for the most part that's when I'll still plan to plant. I might plant this weekend if I get ahead on my projects, but I still have to build the new tomato trellis support system, so I have to do that before I plant the tomatoes. But I took everything in last night. I didn't take a chance with it because, so in 2018, it was, I think, the 29th of April or close to it, it got really, really cold that night, and it wasn't forecast to get that cold. We were after our last frost date, so I just took it for granted that it was safe to leave everything outside that night. And when I woke up in the morning, it was 30 degrees, and my tomato plants were frozen solid all the way through the pot, all the way through the soil. Every leaf, every stem, every little bit of those plants was completely frozen solid. And it was still dark when I woke up that morning. It was like 5:30 or 6, and I was frantically running out on my deck, grabbing everything, bringing it inside, because I had read that sometimes if you soak the plants with water before the sun hits them, that they will survive being frozen like that. So I went ahead and I grabbed everything and I threw it in the kitchen sink, and I was like soaking it all with like room temperature water, trying to save it. And I think I managed to save like 2 tomato plants out of 30 by doing that. So I lost pretty much everything that night that I had started that year, and it was too late to start over at that point. So rather than go through that again, I err on the side of caution and I take everything inside on these nights when it's not quite May and
the frost may or may not happen. You can get a frost at 40 degrees, which last night we were 40 and we had a frost on our car and on the roof. So you have to look at your dew point. If your dew point is really low, that increases your odds of having a frost, even if it's not 32 degrees outside. I think last night our dew point was like 40 degrees and it was like 40 degrees. So that's not great, and that's probably why we got a frost. If your dew point is 45 or higher, I think that means that you won't have a frost. It won't be able to form a frost. But if it's below 45, I think you can still form a frost. So when you are trying to figure out if it's safe to plant outside or not, you also need to think about that dew point. Just because it's 40 degrees doesn't mean that it's safe. Interesting thing is that because our ground is so warm, there was no frost on the ground. And so I think even the plants that I didn't cover will be okay. There was a couple of plants that I actually just plain forgot to cover. I forgot to cover some volunteer tomatoes that came up where we used to have a compost pile, and I forgot to cover some Emerald Delight zucchinis that I already had put in the ground around this tree behind me. So, and they were a little crispy this morning, so I'm not sure if those will make it, but zucchinis grow so fast that I have plenty of time to start another one, because I don't have, typically don't see a frost here until around the 1st of November. So you also need to remember that your zone has nothing to do with your last frost date. There are people that live in my zone and they have a last frost date that's like a month earlier than mine. And then there are people that live in a much lower number zone who have the same frost date. Like, I live just 45 minutes north of Atlanta, so I live in the deep south, but there are parts of Wisconsin that have the same last frost date as where I live. So your zone and your frost date are not the same. Don't conflict those two things, because then you might find out the hard way that your zone doesn't mean that it's safe to plant. Well, I guess I'm gonna let these birds out, and let's see. Yeah, I've been out here for an hour today. I already got 4,800 steps today, just carrying those plants back outside. I had 14,000 yesterday from probably mostly from taking them inside and also from wandering around out here in the morning. But yeah, so I guess that was my hour in the garden today, was just uncovering things, bringing the plants back outside and putting stuff back away. But I think that was the last time I have to do any of that, so that's okay. I'm happy with that if it was the last time.